Welcome everyone to the Generation Lyme Podcast. My name is Jesse Ruben. I'm on the board of Generation Lyme, and I am here with the rest of my board members, Brooke, Haley, and Jennifer. Hello everyone. How are we doing?
Hello.
Doing good.
If this is your first time here, welcome. If you are a returning champion, welcome back. Generation Lyme, I don't even know where that came from. I've never said that before.
It was amazing.
Leaving it in. Generation Lyme is a community for anyone impacted by Lyme disease. We like to have a podcast every month based on the previous month's monthly topic. That's much harder to say than I wanted it to be. Last month's topic was change, so that will be the theme for this podcast. Thank you for being here. Before we start, don't forget to rate and review us 5 stars. It really helps on any and all places where you get your podcast. Thank you so much. No more announcements. We're going to get right into it. Guys, December's monthly topic was change. We start every podcast the same way. Why did we choose change as a topic? What did we think would happen? What actually happened? How did it go? And anyone can start except Haley, who requested she not go first on this month's podcast.
Thanks for blowing my cover.
That's what you get. We're an open book here at Generation Lyme.
So there will be some people who are regular meetup attendees or social media followers who are like, but change was November.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that. We skipped a month because I was traveling and I'm not sure what day it is. Whatever. It's called brain fog, guys. Don't worry about it.
So this was one of those topics where we internally didn't all feel the same way about it. And we were talking about how we were excited about this podcast episode because some of us said we like change and some of us said we did not like change, right?
I think that's kind of what happens every time we choose a topic. Some people absolutely hate it and some people absolutely despise it. And there is no in between.
I feel like this one in particular, we had, at least among the 4 of us, there was like a very strong, usually the 4 of us are kind of all like, yeah, that's a good one. I have strong feelings about it, but it's a good one. Whereas this one, I feel like some of us really weren't for it.
Wait, it was so long ago. I don't even remember the debate.
Oh,
Was I a naysayer? Is that why I don't remember?
No, I perked up and said that I didn't like change, and this is a great analogy for what often happens in meetups where we get a lot of people together affected by Lyme, and different people have different reactions to a topic, often of which it's a pretty simple word. Like in this case, it was change. And I think the place that I was coming from is, I can only speak for sort of myself personally in my own experience, but I often work towards getting to a place of personal happiness and satisfaction in different areas of my life. And when I get there, I don't crave change. In fact, I crave change until I get to that sort of space or that plateau, and then I don't want any more change because to me, I've sort of reached the goal. And so it was pretty humorous because as we discussed change as a topic, I remember very quickly saying, I don't like change very much. And that was kind of the origin of this comment.
I don't think you were alone in that one.
Did I also? Because my wife and I argue about this all the time because she loves redecorating, painting, new artwork, and I hate all of that stuff. And we have talked about it for years that I absolutely despise change, and my wife really loves it. So maybe there's, like a gender component of this, just to really be general and stereotypical. But I don't remember that conversation at all. But I mean, it worked out. We survived. Everyone lived. Cooler heads prevailed.
I thought it was really interesting because, change is part of all of our lives, right? And we did all agree that it would be a worthwhile conversation. We just disagreed on how we felt about it. And then hearing what everybody had to say about it made me question what change meant to all of us, because some of us in this conversation, it's like, interior decorating and
the worst
day-to-day things, but that can change that can like make a difference in how you feel. But for someone else, it might means something else. So when I think it's an interesting question, like when you say you like or dislike change, what are you actually talking about? And for me, I was on the other side of that in terms of liking change, but it's not so much that I just love things being different all the time for the sake of being different, or feel pushed to like I'll always have the sense of urgency to be uncomfortable for the sake of growing or something like that. But I do love progress and the idea of improvement on a personal level and on like a societal level. And more than anything, I just love that we're able to do that. I love that we're able to evolve and improve on things that make people happier and safer and healthier and all that good stuff, and like self-evaluate in order to do so and include more people and all that. And I do feel that I think we quoted in the change social media post that the only constant in life is change. And it seems like I feel like that's true. I don't know if everybody does. And but it's definitely ever present. And especially for those of people in the Lyme community, it's kind of like, how do we deal with that? So it seemed like such a good conversation instead of, so the way I took that is kind of like, instead of just the miserable, depressing aspect of getting upset about the changes we encounter by because of our symptoms and our diagnosis, it's like there's this flip side of we still have this capacity by the sake of being human to improve again, to adjust or get something out of it, or maybe not to become what we once, everything we had before, but to make some progress in a way that we're happy with.
I love all of that in theory. I just think there's a limit to how many pillows you can have on one couch, Like I
disagree.
I agree. That's
like there needs to be some
Jen,
space.
if you're listening, add a pillow.
There's no room. She can't.
I love that. I have a lot of fun.
I definitely, Jennifer, I love everything you said. I've always said to like my parents and my friends, one of my beliefs in life is that one of our superpowers as humans is the ability to evolve and change. And I actually didn't remember about that till you said something around those lines, Jennifer. So thank you. But yeah, it's an uncomfortable thing. And I've also always been a person who needs to feel a level of that discomfort as long as it's a productive change, or I'm going towards a productive thing in life. So I was definitely one of the people who was all for this topic, and I think we all know that I like stirring people's thoughts up with the topics by now. But yeah, I think change is necessary to survive society. And when you have something like a chronic illness like Lyme, it's inevitable in different ways. Like I know for me personally, and I know I've talked to many people in the Lyme community about this, but like everything about me has changed down to like my looks and thoughts and everything like that. So it's definitely something that I've grown more accustomed to over the years and maybe didn't like as much in the past, but now have learned to love it in a way.
That is a great segue for my next question. It's we're recording this in early January, so I would love to just take a second and look back on last year and 2022, and I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll share as well. But what is something either that you did change that you're really proud of yourself for, or something that you wanted to change in 2022 but didn't, and maybe you've been beating yourself up about it, even though you know you probably shouldn't? But yeah, either one of those. We can go positive direction or more self-aware. But I would just love to hear it because we don't really get a chance to talk about personal stuff. We're usually talking about Gen Lyme stuff. So, I would love to know like what's one thing you guys changed last year or you wish you had that you're hoping to this year or yeah.
Jesse, why don't you go first on this one? You
Oh,
never get to talk.
I
Love
know.
that.
I never
Yeah,
get
Jesse.
No, I talk all the time.
Well, you talk, but you never get to answer the questions.
Yeah. I have
Love
two. I have a lot, but I guess I was gonna say a bunch of them. But the biggest one was for me was I stopped drinking in September, and it was something that I had been thinking about for a long time. And I wish that I could say that I just like woke up one day and was like, I would like to be healthier and take care of myself. But that's not what happened. What happened was I, along with a friend, attempted to drink most of the martinis in this hemisphere, and came home very late and got into a big dumb fight with my wife. And that little voice in my head that went, "Maybe you shouldn't be doing this anymore," got really loud. And because it's not that every time I would drink, I would act like an idiot, but every time I acted like a big idiot, coincidentally, I was usually drinky. So I decided to take a step back from it, like mid-September. And what's been interesting about it is this is not the first time I've taken a break from alcohol. I ran my first marathon when I was 26, and my friend and I took 6 months off back then. But back then, so it was like 10 years ago, the response was like, "What are you doing? Your life is going to be terrible now." And of course it wasn't, but that was like the prevailing theme. Whereas now, 10 years later, in our mid-30s, when people find out that I am taking a break from alcohol, the response is mostly like, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that. I feel horrible." So it's been really interesting to see that difference. But yeah, for me, just trying to last year was a year about trying to take care of myself and really set boundaries and not do as much out of obligation and really do things that I choose to do and spend my time on things that are really fulfilling and spending time with people that really build me up and not the other way around. And I just found that I was doing a lot of things every day or every week or every month that spending a lot of time and energy on things that I just would look back and go like, why am I doing that? So that was kind of a big one. That was a long-winded answer to a simple question. Anyone else? It doesn't.
I can go.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a
Go
big
for it, Haley.
thing. Like somebody.
No, mine's gonna be well. I feel like all of this is big. I mean, I don't. Just to go off of that a little bit, I feel like we shouldn't minimize or minimalize, whichever you prefer. We shouldn't minimize changes because they may seem small to you or to the world. But like if they seem small to you, to the world, they might be huge. And if they seem small to the world, to you, they might be huge. So I think like people say like, oh, a small change is that I don't drink anymore. But to some people, that's a huge deal. And it could make a huge difference in your life. So I just want to
I mean,
little side
especially
note. Not that you were trying to like bring people down.
No, I'm not trying to
reminder in there.
I'm not trying to bring anybody down at all. I think everybody's relationship with alcohol is different. And for me, especially being a musician and staying up late and going out all the time, like it's just such a big part of like daily life in New York City, or it can be.
Yeah.
And just to take a step back and go like, why am I doing this? And why am I making these choices? And it's like, well, sometimes in social situations, like I get anxious and then I want to drink so that I can be less anxious. And it's like, or I could just be a little anxious for a little bit until I like get to talk to people and then I'm fine. Like I don't have to go right for the self-medicating thing.
Anytime someone's able to look in the mirror, it's another superpower. So mine, the one that comes off of the top of my head, there's so many things that have happened in the past couple years and I can't even remember what year, what things happened anymore. As we said before, what day is it? And time's not real. But this year I officially started treating my own patients at school. And I officially graduate in April, and I am super scared for that. And that's a huge change, but that's for April. But a common theme I see in this community, a common theme with me, is beating ourselves up and not thinking we're good enough. And just thinking we need to prove ourselves and work harder and harder and harder, when we're already doing a really good job and definitely good enough. So I kind of had like I slapped myself in the face kind of moment, not literally, figuratively. And I did the opposite of what I usually do, which is looking in the mirror and saying like, do better, do better. And I actually started believing in myself, and actually started seeing results with patients after I did that. So yeah, and also setting big boundaries with myself and other people to be able to nurture that mindset. So my biggest change was my mental mindset of getting a better balance between when I need to look in the mirror and when I need to figure out what I'm doing a little more, but also being proud of myself when I should be, and kind of patting myself on the back and taking a little credit for results that I'm seeing, with patience. So yeah, I've been proud of myself lately, which is kind of uncomfortable because it's so foreign to me, but
Golf clap.
it feels good.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're proud of you too.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Brooke and Jennifer, what are your changes from 2022?
I'll go. Well, the first one that came to mind for me is directly related to Lyme disease. And so I'm going to totally oversimplify my treatment journey over the past many years, but the long story short of it is I took a cocktail of oral antibiotics for roughly 5 years, and I've been, trying to transition away from them to herbal supplements, or sort of like non-prescriptive, herbal supplements, the kinds of stuff you would buy in the nutrition aisle at Whole Foods. And I'm trying to use those as substitutes for antibiotics, which anyone with Lyme disease would likely understand. But the process of doing this will explain a lot about the way I think about change. And it's essentially this. I was very happy for 5 years taking the same cocktail of oral antibiotics on a daily or sort of weekly basis. But I had this goal eventually, which was I want to get off of this, prescriptive antibiotic cocktail and switch to herbals, because I think it's going to serve me better long term. And in order to do that, I had to, take a lesson from Haley, which was to seek a little discomfort, go back to experimenting with a lot of herbal supplements that I wasn't familiar with or had to spend money on or had to, run through my body over a course of a day or a couple of days just to feel the effects of them. And it wasn't easy, but over last year, I would say I got to a place where I've almost completely weaned myself off antibiotics and now only rely on a new kind of liquid cocktail of herbal supplements. And I'm really proud of that because it wasn't easy, but it's something that I wanted to do. And it took a lot of experimentation, which for me, and I think for many Lyme patients, is just so annoying. It's expensive. It's like treating your body like a guinea pig to figure out what things you can buy that are going to help you scientifically and sort of not give you unbearable side effects. And so I went through that process of trying different herbal supplements, keeping the ones that worked, eliminating the ones that didn't. And over roughly a year, maybe a year and a half long period, I got to a point where I'm pretty much just on herbal supplements, entirely. And I think that's really cool because
Super cool.
it just, and of course, now that I have this cocktail of herbal supplements, I don't want any change from that. So I think that takes things full circle. But
love it. I mean, I just was remembering, of course, when you're dealing with health stuff and you get to a better place, you don't want to rock the boat because God forbid you get worse. And of course, Lyme patients more than other people are gonna be hesitant to change anything, especially if they find stuff that's working. And if you're 90% better, is it worth it to get to that last 10%, or do you just want to stay where you are? It can be really challenging.
How petrifying is rocking the boat?
I mean, I know.
Can we just give a minute to that for a second?
I know.
This was kind of what
the scariest thing in the freaking world.
Yeah. This is kind of what I was getting at earlier when I realized that a big question was, what are we talking about when we're talking about change? Because, for example, some of us are scared of rocking the boat, or we might not want to when we're at a relatively good place, like that 90% better position. And yet there are plenty of people in the Lyme community who can only dream of being that much better, because it takes so much privilege and luck and so many things to get to that place that they're also terrified of rocking the boat, but for very different reasons. Or can be terrified of going outside, or like the wind blowing slightly differently, or any other things we talked about in other podcasts, like other food, other just
stepping
difficult
on
conversations. Oh God, right. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Because anything can make things get worse. And if you're, instead of being 90% better, but if you're kind of like 10% okay, things going worse can be disastrous.
Right.
And you don't even have to be at 10% for it to be disastrous. So in that sense, sometimes change can be, for anybody, change can be either immensely scary or like incredibly desired, because there's still something, not
or
quite.
both at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Jennifer, what was your change from 2022?
There have been quite a lot. I have been definitely pushing myself, but I think again, I'm more on the side of always doing that. With regard to my health, there have been immense changes. In many ways, I have improved a lot of things dramatically, and I'll explain how and why. And in other ways, the process of it just felt really difficult and unpleasant. And I spent the year feeling really unhealthy while going through this improvement process, because I was kind of doing experiments and trying new things. And that's, as Brooke said, that's how it goes. But I wanted a change. I've been taking antibiotics for a long time, and herbal supplements, and doing IVs, and making lifestyle changes, and so on. And I've only gotten so much relief for Lyme and co-infections like Babesia and Bartonella and a couple of others. In 2022, really starting December 2021, I got COVID many times, like 4 times. And that made the year difficult because I didn't have a short stint at any of those times. And that made my underlying infections that I had worked on previously much worse again each time. And my ability to fight off COVID just got worse. Kept getting more difficult. So this year I tried something new. I learned about SOT, and I know that's become more of a hot topic in the community. And
You want to explain what that is, just in case people are listening that don't know what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
No?
yes, it's a selective oligonucleotide therapy, and it's a new type of treatment that in the past has had successes with things like blood cancers, and in the past couple of years has been applied to infectious diseases like tick-borne diseases. And it's performed very well. It's not currently FDA approved. And yet patients do often respond very well. It doesn't necessarily eradicate the infection, but it's very promising. Some patients have total symptom reduction over time, and some people have massive amount of symptom reduction and infectious burden load reduction, and some people don't respond. It operates differently than antibiotics do by targeting one pathogen at a time, which is the selective oligonucleotide thing. They extract this single protein, I think, from your blood that they've identified through a blood test of yours, and then the treatment is synthesized in a lab. The process takes a long time to get to you, and then the infusion is done usually at once. It's not a long infusion, but it works by preventing the replication of the single pathogen that it's targeting. So you do one treatment for one thing at a time, spaced apart. And over time, as the bacteria or virus would try to replicate, instead it would die. And you would feel it, like that's when your herxes would be, and your painful side effects would happen, because you'd feel it dying inside, and you wouldn't feel so well. And that would really occur with 4 to 6 months following your infusion. And so I did that for Babesia and Lyme this year. I started Babesia in I want to say June. It might have been, but I postponed it many times because of COVID, and I followed that up with Lyme. And the Babesia one seems to have knocked out the Babesia that I have struggled with for a very long time, and the Lyme one drastically reduced the amount of Lyme that I had in my body. It's not eradicated, but instead of, say, 4 or 5 DNA bands, I now have 2. And you can follow them up, the SOTs up again. So I'm looking to do it again, potentially soon. And this change felt, considering I was doing, I had COVID, I was doing these treatments, I was doing additional treatments for the infections and post-COVID stuff, and taking medications. I spent the majority of the year feeling really crummy, but I also, with this SOT, started to feel something change inside. Like I could imagine something else. It's really hard to explain, but like suddenly I was getting a feeling like maybe I could spend a small portion of my day, or an increasingly large portion of my day, not thinking so much about Lyme or my Lyme. I don't mind thinking about everybody else's Lyme with regard to like Generation Lyme, but I think you all know what I mean when I say that, about how everything in life has to revolve around my illness. And suddenly I had this radical shift that I didn't have to live like that. And it was really weird.
A little hope, maybe? A little bit of
maybe. And
that was
sprinkle.
Little dabble of hope, maybe?
That was so weird. I was not
a little pinch.
Talk about that was, if anything, that was the kind of change that I was a little scared of, because I was like, I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to, totally think or speak out of turn. But I was in this time, I was really ready to go with it, because I didn't feel like, I think we've talked about in the past in other podcasts, that I thought I was either going to be sick or healthy, and that's it, messed up or perfect, and that's it. And instead I was like, I think I can do a little more, or think a little differently.
Yeah, we talked about that.
That was the biggest change.
We talk about that a lot, where everything's not like a binary, like you're not either like sick or healthy, it's like a scale, and you're constantly changing. But
I really want people, Yeah, I always want to put forward the message that there's a lot of life in between being really sick and focusing on your sickness only because you have to, and being in full remission and having, big air quotes here, perfect health. There's a lot of life to be had and a lot of experiences to live.
What even is that? What
That's
even
kind of what
is?
we're sort of doing it. So
Haley, before we started recording, you mentioned you had a question that you wanted to pose to us. So I'd love for you to, I'm going to throw it to you. I'd love to hear what that question is.
Throw it over. Jesse with the assist. Yeah, so I host the parents meetup every month. And a big theme during that meetup of change was how much change they've seen in their loved ones who are Lyme patients. And when someone's in the thick of it and struggling with Lyme, there's not much positive change that you can see from the outside or even from the inside at the time. So at the end, during branding questions, I was asked what I thought was a pretty powerful question of, can you ever be the same again? And the parents kind of posed it as like their kid or loved one is so different now. And like, there's depression, there's fatigue, there's people that are bedridden. And can you just ever be the fun-loving kid that they remember, So I had my answer in the meetup, and I'm happy to share it here, but I thought it was a really good question, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Jesse has strong thoughts.
I feel like I could talk about this forever.
I agree.
The first thing that came to mind was I remember years and years ago I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like on and off with the same girl, like just together, breaking up, together, breaking up. And finally, after the last time they broke up for good, and it was like, well, what why now? Like why don't you want to go back to her anymore? And he said, I've seen too many ghosts. Like I've seen what's behind the curtain and I don't like it and I don't want to go back there. And that was the first thing I thought of when you were asking that, is like, I remember, because I've been mostly in remission for a long time now, for like 6 or 7 years now. And I just remember so much of when I was really bad, of like, I just want to get back to the way I was before. I just want to get back to the way I was before. That was never going to be the case. You like open Pandora's box, you see the way that we treat chronically ill people, you see the way the medical community treats chronically ill people. I do think that the human body is not designed to suffer day after day after day. You go to bed not feeling well, you wake up not feeling well, you go to bed not feeling well, over and over. I think that takes a toll. And so I think absolutely, for me, there was never going back to Lyme. I think that I have managed to regain a lot of the things that brought me joy, where when I was really sick, I didn't have any of those as a part of my life. That's kind of the way I described Lyme, is it just takes anything about your life that makes you happy at all and robs you of it. So I've managed to reconnect with people that I didn't talk to for a while, and I've managed to travel again and work and have relationships and be social. But I have been through this experience and I have learned so much about these things that no, I don't think I can see why a parent would ask that. Like, is my kid ever going to come back? And I don't want to say no, but I think even if all of our symptoms magically went away right now, even just the four of us are not the same people that we were before this experience. You can't be. You just can't. So yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
No, so I think the answer to that question is no. I don't think you can go back to your quote unquote yourself. I think it's a new version, and I remember when I was really sick, people would say all the time, like, well, think about how empathetic you'll be when you get better. And I was like, I was already pretty empathetic before all this. Like, I don't need a lesson here. I just want to not suffer anymore. I don't think that's too much to ask. But no, I just, yeah, it changes your personality. It changes your memory. It changes your relationship to money. It changes your relationship to friends and family. It changes your relationship to work and ableism and what it means to be a contributing member of society. And yeah, no, the short answer is no. I think you can regain some of the joy and the things that make you happy, but it's a traumatic experience, and for some people it's a long traumatic experience, and that takes a toll. Not necessarily always negative. I think the four of us have helped a lot of people, and that came from us suffering. But are there times where I wish that I was still totally in the dark and clueless about how horrible Lyme is and the way that, like, yeah, of course. When people come on meetups and it's their first time and they've been told their whole lives that Lyme's not that big a deal, or 2 weeks of antibiotics, and you remember that? You remember that train of thought of, like, just not knowing anything? Oh, yay, I got a diagnosis. This will be over soon. Like, we've seen too many ghosts. We know too much.
That's a great analogy. And my short answer was also no. And after saying that, I saw a lot of panic faces. And like you said, like, it's just parents wanting their kids back and not this suffering person. Like, I can't even imagine being a parent and, like, I freak out if my cat is yelling in the other corner. Like, this is a human person that like, and you're just watching them suffer. So I thought it was a really good question, and I agree with you for most of it. I definitely consider myself one of the quote unquote lucky ones. My parents are supportive, and I have resources to get good treatment, which I have gotten. And that's why I've gotten to the point that I've gotten to so far. So my longer answer is that you'll never be the same. But in my case, I'm so damn grateful for that. When I was, for those of you who don't know, I was completely bedridden for over 5 years. And 4 of those years I was like a zombie. I couldn't function other than breathe by myself. So during those 4 or 5 years, I lost everyone in my life pretty much, except for my parents. And at the time it was horrendous. Can't even put it into words. But since then, and since all these traumatic experiences that I've had, I have relationships with people in my life that I never knew could exist. They're so meaningful and deep, and like, my friends are my family. And I always heard people say that, but I legitimately never knew that could exist. Jesse, like you said, I think about myself differently. I think about the world differently. I'm more empathetic. I'm going to have a career that I actually love instead of sitting behind a desk 9 to 5, doing graphic design, which is, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not for me. I am way too ADD to sit behind a desk from 9 to 5. But kudos if you're one of the people who can do that, because I don't know how. But yeah, I just think, like, in a twisted way, my experience has been such a gift to me, and I will never be the same. And I am so thankful for that every day.
Do you relate to it like it's a gift, though? Like, do you wake up with gratitude in your soul? Or is it like,
for some of the things?
I remember thinking, like, when I get better, I'm going to wake up with a smile on my face and I'm going to be happy all the time. That lasted legit 3 days. Like 3 days. For 3 days, I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. And I was like floating on clouds. And like day 4, I woke up and I was like, oh, okay, now like I have to be a person again. And like, well, you know, I just went
I
right
mean,
back to.
it's definitely day to day. Like lately it's been hot and raining when it's supposed to be cold and snowy. So my body hates it and my
Totally.
mind hates it.
So hot in here.
Yes, it's just like it's
Poor
January.
Jennifer.
It shouldn't be 70 degrees in my apartment. Actually, it's 73.
Yeah, we have the air conditioning on in our apartment right now.
Jennifer and I can't have the air conditioning on because it's too loud and
Poor
we're
things.
allergic to it.
Our lives are hard.
Woe is us.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to your question. Does that answer it? Yeah, some days I get out of bed and I'm like, excuse my language, holy shit, like I would never have this life if I didn't get deathly ill multiple times. And other days I wake up and I say, why the hell is this still happening? I'm strong enough. I don't need any what doesn't kill you makes you stronger or like the empathetic thing. So it's day to day. I'm not saying that everything's rosy and beautiful. But for me, in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, I'm much better off mental health wise than I would have ever been.
Jennifer, Brooke, I would love to hear what you guys think about this question. What a good question.
About the is my kid going to be the same again, or
Well,
is this a gift?
No,
can
can you ever be
same?
the same again
Oh.
after going
Okay.
through this?
I love that question.
It's great.
It's a great question. A couple of things. Wouldn't it be really weird if people just went back to being exactly what they were before, like nothing happened?
It's a great
Wouldn't
point.
that be kind of odd to
It's a
go
great
through
point.
something deeply traumatic, or, you know, literally like physically changing, life changing on a cellular level, and then go, all right, as if that time had not passed? I mean,
But isn't that kind of what we like did as a society with COVID, where it was like, no, let's just like get
Yes.
through that as quickly as
And-
possible. Nothing
Yes.
to see here.
and isn't it odd? And we as a community have gone on with each other. And in case anybody doesn't know this, I'm informing you, as a community, we've talked extensively about how that may not be the healthiest response. So yes, I think that's a perfect example of how that would be kind of strange. I agree. I don't think you can necessarily go back to being the exact same person. There are many caveats, though. If you're talking about a young child that's still in a certain stage of development and they go through something that may be short term, like devastating but short term, can they go back to resembling what they were in the 6 months to a year prior and continue developing? Maybe. I'm not a pediatrician or a child psychologist or psychiatrist. I don't know. However, I think it's easy to say that might have an impact and that's okay. And as both of you have said already, for an adult dealing with something traumatic, whether it's acute or chronic, short or long term, there's going to be something that informs you moving forward, and it should. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're destined to have only a terrible life because you've gone through a bad thing. And it doesn't even mean that you have to think that your illness is a gift, because a lot of people don't feel that way, and they don't have to. It's just they can be like really mad about that, and they're allowed to. A lot of it is just about how each of us chooses to feel and what we choose to do with ourselves moving forward. And that's the empowering thing. It's not the terrible thing that does the magic. It's us, and maybe the people in our lives, but it's we have that kind of capacity. And I guess to conclude this, I remember when I felt really, when I'd been going through a lot of changes with just generally, there was one time around 2014, I think I'd started changing a lot. I'd been in New York for a while. I'd been struggling with my health for a long time. Being on my own made me change, and also dealing with a lot of health stuff made me change. And some friends that I'd known for a long time were kind of didn't all handle it the same way, let's just say. One of my friends pointed out to me that I had changed, and at first I was kind of upset about it. And then she said, "It's okay." And it is okay. It's good. And then maybe 5 years after that, I realized I was going through a lot more changes, a lot more devastating health-wise, because it was way more acute. Was diagnosed by then. And I remember seeing this meme that many of us have probably seen. And I think it was like a caterpillar talking to a butterfly or something like that. And the cat, it's like, I could be getting it wrong. Maybe it was two butterflies, but I think you'll get the point. And the butterfly was all colorful, but it was like, what the one said to the colorful butterfly, "You've changed." And then the beautiful butterfly said, "Aren't we supposed to?" And I thought that was pretty cool.
I love these answers. Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, hard to go last for this one, but I think I don't have much to add. But I think what I would tell parents is, parents can see in the kids that they love who, if the kid is experiencing a sort of a long-term form of Lyme disease or tick-borne infection, the parent can clearly see that that's a difficult physical and mental and emotional experience for the child. And an experience like that, in my mind, I think is likely to create some sort of change in the child. And I think that's actually where I would sort of like leave the statement, because after that it becomes more unpredictable, and how does the person change, unknown. But I think what I would tell a parent is that a long-term form of Lyme disease is likely to cause some sort of change in a young person, and maybe the parent can just be aware of that, or be accepting of it. I think there are aspects of me that are very different after my Lyme experience versus before, but I think there are a couple of things that are actually the same. And I think trying to predict that before I contracted Lyme disease would be impossible. So parents have a tough job loving their kids who might have Lyme disease, but I think just being aware that changes can occur from this type of experience, which everyone has talked about, can be very traumatic and difficult. A change could be expected.
Yeah, I think it's so important to mention just quickly that, like, it doesn't just change the patient either. Like for parents and supporters, like it's likely
depends on the parents.
It depends. It depends. The supportive parents and supporters.
I'll see myself
and even
out.
not, you never know.
Yeah.
But people around this illness as well tend to change. I'll just speak from my personal experience. Like, my parents and we have a very different relationship now than we used to, and they're very different people, and I mean that in the best way. But if this didn't happen to us, it would look a lot different, all three of us. And I just want to point out that there's only 4 of us here, and we all have had different experiences with change through our illness, and if we can ever be the same again. And I think we need to highlight that, and just remind everyone that may be listening that wherever you are, or however you feel about this or this question, whether it's like me where I'm more on the gifted side, other than some days where I think this is all a curse and it's a sick joke on humanity.
You can think both.
Yeah, I was gonna say
You can
two
think
things can be
both.
true.
Yeah.
You can think both, and it's totally fine. You can think both, you can think one, you can think the other. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you're alive and you're here with us, and yeah.
I think the thing that stuck out to me while I was listening to you guys talk was just even the question itself, especially coming from a group of parents. Like you can hear the fear and the concern in the question. Like, is my kid that I love more than anything in the world going to ever be back to this perfect little creature that I love? You know, it's like, oh, it's just so heartbreaking.
It is.
Can we also just remember that, I mean, it's not like, okay, before I say what I was going to say, Lyme and other tick-borne diseases are devastating. Like when we get to the part of the conversation where we're having this podcast, they're devastating. They're very serious. So yes, but also life does change people. So it's not just that if you've changed or if your loved one changes because they have Lyme disease, they're somehow broken in a way that's so much worse than anybody else. And I think a lot of us lose sight of that because we feel like it's just us. We're so, we've got this thing that makes us so much worse or more, messed up. But everybody goes through life and gets some kind of stuff. It doesn't make you or us any less valuable or worthy or valid as a, human being.
Totally.
The talk about supporters, though, I did also want to mention that we've put together a fair amount of resources now for supporters at the Gen Lyme website. A lot of us on our team, especially shout out to Fallon. And so any supporters out there or patients who want to share information with their loved ones, go to genlyme.org and tap the menu item that says for supporters. And you'll see a lot of good stuff that hopefully will be helpful in navigating your experiences.
Jennifer taking my job here. Jeez.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
I'm just kidding. I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. Is there anything anyone would like to add? I know we could talk about this forever and ever and ever, but we have just a couple minutes left if anyone has anything else they want to say.
I think that was a nice little bow on top.
That was a perfect way to wrap up.
Beautiful. A couple things before we get out of here. We've been talking a lot about the Parents Meetup. The Parents Meetup is the first Monday of every month at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. You can find the rest of our meetup schedule and a whole bunch of information, including all of our resources for supporters at our website, genlyme.org, GENLYME.org. Jennifer has done a pretty amazing job keeping that website up to date and with a ton of great information. So please check it out. Share it with people who you think might need it.
And our supporters meetup is the third Tuesday of every month.
And this is not going to turn into a quiz about when our meetup schedule, because I don't know it off the top of my head. But if you've gotten to the end of this podcast, thank you so much for listening. You're a huge part of the Generation Lyme community, and we wouldn't be here without you. And we appreciate you so much. If there's anything we can do for you or any suggestions you have for us, please let us know. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. And we'll see you again next month for another episode of the podcast. And other than that, stay safe, stay as healthy as you can, and we'll see you very soon. Brooke, Haley, and Jennifer, always a pleasure hanging with you guys. I appreciate you being here. And yeah, I don't.
Back at you.
I'm stalling.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. You know. Good job, guys.
We're gonna talk in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Good job. See ya.